Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. And for all those out there, we do have some serious news to report. There was an 8.1 earthquake today in New Zealand. 8.1. Now, that's pretty big. So that's the only reason why I'm doing that. I've never heard of an 8.1. I'm sure there have been, but that's pretty big. There's also tsunami watch, for everywhere around the world, Tahiti, Hawaii, and all those other places. I'm sure they'll be fine, but just want to let everybody know. You are listening to the Ask Brien radio show, and the E in Ask Brien does stand for empathy. So we're empathizing with all the people regarding the earthquake and regarding the possible tsunami watches. And for those of you who have never listened to the Ask Brien radio show, just go over some ground rules so everybody understands what's going on. Ask Brien is a business channel. We provide information by providing either startups or CEOs of startups or people that are teaching a business lesson to others on the Ask Brien radio show each week. Ask Brien is spelled Askbrien, and everybody asks, why do you spell Brien with an E? Because when I went to school, and when I had friends, all my friends are B-R-Y-A-N or I-A-N. I never heard of an E-N unless I was talking to the bloody old Irish, O'Brien, O'Brien, and O'Brien. So therefore, we wanted to know why is Brien spelled with an E. And our engineer, which begins with an E, plus the empathy is one of the two reasons. So without any further ado, engineer, why do they spell it with an E?
Well, I'll tell you why, Brien. There's a number of words that have to do with the Ask Brien radio show that kind of like it's the theme of our show. And you did say empathy, so you did take that out, which is great. So we got one covered. Another one we have is, we do have effort because everybody here gives nothing but 110% effort on what they do. Next one.
But you, but go ahead.
Oh, come on. Well, he wasn't very empathetic with me on that one. One of my personal favorites happens to be the engineer one because you can't run the show without the engineer. That's me. And you didn't take it from me this time. So he did show me some empathy today.
For one, because you weren't listening.
Oh.
We have artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence will be getting rid of the engineer any day now. So it was nice knowing you. Great to have you on. See ya.
Oh, man. And the other ones we have are excellence because everybody here exudes nothing but excellence in what they do. And then isn't there two in particular that are kind of synonymous with each other that you really, really like?
Well, there's one that's much bigger that you haven't gone over.
Well, let's see. Excellence. Oh, you know what? Our experts, because everybody on the Ask Brien radio show is always an expert in what they do.
So what are you an expert in?
Engineer.
Ooh.
I'm an expert in being an engineer.
I was being very empathetic.
Yes, you were. And we have two more. Oh, yeah, that's right. We have enthusiasm and go for it.
Everybody get excited!
Woohoo! Yes, indeed.
Are we ready to rock and roll?
We are ready to rock and roll.
All right. So before we go, without any further ado, today's show is a very special show. We have a great, great guest, and I'm going to let Tracy, my co-host, introduce this enormous, fantastic, excitable, great, Tracy, go.
Okay, our guest today is Brien, host of the Ask Brien radio show, who is enthusiastic, an expert. We're still trying to determine in what, and he is excited to be interviewed by me, your other co-host of the Ask Brien radio show, Tracy DeForge.
I am an expert in sarcasm. I'm an expert in sarcasm.
Well, I thought it would be great to interview you today, Brien, because, just to really give people a true behind-the-scenes look at who you really are.
No one really knows, but okay.
I know it is. You hide your mystique very well, but today we're going to go behind the scenes of the Ask Brien radio show, and we're going to have conversation with each other about each other. and I think it's going to be fascinating.
Well, you know, I'm a true introvert.
No, I did not know that, and I don't think anyone would believe you. And we are supposed to be speaking honestly on this show, so please don't start out by lying.
Well, you know that my personal trait is I am a lawyer, so, you know.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that. So actually, that's part of your profession. Just kidding. No, it's not. No, I have a huge respect for lawyers. So so let me start with my first question. Tell us why and what was the pivotal moment when you decided to become an attorney?
Well, actually, that's going to be a little personal, but I'm going to tell it to you. So, you know.
Oh, this is just the beginning of personal stress.
So I was 8 years old. You know, I'm sure by 8 years old that Patty knew he was going to be an engineer, and you knew you were going to be in the podcast industry. Well, when I was 8 years old,
I knew I was going to be in the radio business. I did know I was going to be in the radio business, but that's when you asked me a question. This is all you.
Right. Well, yeah, but Mickey Mouse doesn't count. Okay. Anyway, what happened was I have to be careful not to go too depth in fact, but essentially, my family lost their inheritance to another sibling, and the lawyer they hired received quite a bit of money and didn't do anything. And I said, that's never going to happen again, and I'm going to be out there fighting for people so that they're never in that situation again. So I always take the position of the little guy. I always take the position of, hey, I want to help people out. I don't want people to be taken advantage of. I don't want somebody to get a contract and, hey, I'm going to pay you $100,000 and don't pay you the $100,000. That's not fair. That's the same thing with here. My parents, my father lost out on millions of dollars at a time when millions was worth a lot more than it is today. And I said, never again. And so I decided I'm going to be a lawyer. And I did. And I went to law school.
So are you... Oh, okay. So are you sure that it wasn't the part of the story where it said that he made a lot of money and he didn't do a lot? Are you sure that wasn't the reason that he decided to become a lawyer?
No, that's the part of the podcast where I pay a lot of money and get nothing out of
it. Okay, so you went to law school. So you when you made your decision to go to get your undergraduate, you knew that was your trajectory then to become a lawyer.
So that's another interesting point. So when I went to law school, I was had taken AP classes in high school and was topping my class in history and those classes. And so I wanted to be a major in poli-sci and history. And my mother said, no, you won't. And I said, what do you mean?
Oh.
No, you won't. My decision. And she said, well, do you want any help for college? I said, yes. They said, well, then you need to go to college and get a discipline. Something that if you decide not to go to law school or you don't want to go to law school or your grades aren't there, that you have an alternative to fall back on, you need a discipline. You like business, so why don't you look into business? So I became an accounting major.
So are you a certified public accountant and an attorney?
I'm certified, but not an accountant. Anyway, no. To become certified, unless I'm in a psych ward, to get certified, you have to go through 2 years of training as an accountant. And I was going to get a job in the accounting field, and one of the areas that I would have to do is I would have to count, and this is not being sarcastic or facetious, I would have to count cans of paint for companies like Sherwin-Williams, et cetera. And I said, I'm not going to sit there in the back room counting paint for 2 years so I can become an accountant. I said, get me out of here. And I had applied to law schools earlier, and I just said, I think I lasted 6 hours in the job. And then I was right on an airplane from Buffalo, New York to San Diego to start law school. The same.
And so where did you go to law school? Where did you go to law school?
I went to law school in San Diego. I went to California Western School of Law. I had a roommate from the University of Buffalo that had gone to university, was going to University of San Diego, and he had a room available. And I quit my job, drove my car home from Buffalo to New York, left the car in the driveway, and said, Mom, I'm going to California. I took my bicycle and a duffel bag and haven't returned.
But you have a very specific focus in your practice, in your law practice. Have you always been a trademark and patent attorney?
I've always been a business attorney, and trademark can come within that category because businesses are trying to either obtain a patent or to brand their business. I had started out at mailboxes, et cetera, which is now called the UPS store. And when I was there, I was basically like a general counsel referring to a lot of different areas. So I was dealing with contracts, small and minor litigation, bankruptcy of franchisees when it happened, trademarks around the world. At that time, this was pre-1991. So in 1991, the United States of America adopted the Madrid Protocols. And the Madrid Protocols allow you to register for a trademark anywhere in the world. Prior to that, and when I started out my career, we're not a participant in the Madrid Protocol, and so therefore we had to locate attorneys in every country in the world. And since we were selling master licenses, an agreement to use the mailbox Citra name in foreign countries, we couldn't sell somebody the right if we didn't own the mark in that country. So there's over 200 countries in the world, and I was corresponding with attorneys from anywhere from Canada to Tanzania to Brazil to Vietnam.
Wow. So is there a landmark case that you've ever been a part of that you could share details with?
Probably the cases that I've dealt with aren't along the lines of trademark per se. I have been involved in cases, for instance, when mailboxes, et cetera, was taken over by UPS, United Parcel Service. There was a situation where the franchisee had a franchise agreement to use the name mailboxes, et cetera. When UPS took over, they wanted to change the name to UPS to be the UPS store and get discounts. Well, franchisees that had signed on with Mailbox, et cetera, some of those franchisees were in areas where Federal Express, DHL, or Airborne, and Airborne was around back in those days, they all wanted to continue to sell those type of overnight services and products, and they were making good money, and most of their clients were from that area. So they didn't want to give up the name Mailbox, et cetera, to become UPS because UPS wasn't very big in that area. So they actually filed a lawsuit, class action suit almost, against UPS. I was also involved, but I was really involved in a big case that's really very, very, very technical. And there's something called declared value. And so when you buy, when you go to the UPS store or something and you say, hey, listen, I want to get covered for $10,000 or whatever, you're really not getting insurance. Insurance is really only obtainable through a private policy that you have or through, you really can't get insurance, okay? The post office allows you to get insurance, but nobody else does. And really what it is something called declared value. And you declare a value of how much the valuation of the product is, but you still have to prove it, and it's not the same as insurance. So therefore, even if the item is damaged, doesn't mean you're going to get paid back for the money. So that was a big case. I was involved with UPS back in 1992 was that case. But I've also been involved in other cases. For instance, I was involved in a Bitcoin case where Mt. Gox was the largest Bitcoin company in the world, and people lost $438 million from Mt. Gox. And when they closed down the company and wouldn't fund people that had Bitcoin money, I actually represented the defendant, and I prevailed. So I've been on both sides of the equation.
Wow. So, not a lot of people know about Bitcoin, or it seems to be like in some ways people are fascinated with it. In some ways people are clueless about it. I mean, is it an actual factual currency?
Well, it depends on how you're defining the word currency. I mean, if currency is you can trade and buy and sell products and services, then technically it would be a currency. I define currency more like in its more traditional form. And so I believe currency is more a government-backed situation where the government is putting up a current and something in value and saying you can use that thing that we print and use it for things. Bitcoin, you would have to define currency as anything that you exchange goods and services for. And it's not like, for instance, if you go to a currency table, you convert U.S. dollars. You can't convert U.S. dollars to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more of a private wallet situation whereby you're actually buying it from some entity. And
right.
For instance, in currency, you can always, tangibly exchange it. Even in a devaluation situation, you cannot really do that with Bitcoin. It's up to wherever you have the Bitcoin with. So my definition of currency is more traditional, and so therefore it has to be backed by a government per se, or not even backed by, but more freely exchangeable, whereas Bitcoin is more private.
Yeah, I saw an article not so long ago where someone was offering like this huge reward because he had accidentally thrown away his hard drive, and it was backed up on all the Bitcoin that he had, and I think it was like, millions of dollars in Bitcoin had gotten thrown away on his hard drive, and he was paying a reward, and he was trying to get people to let him look through the landfill and everything else. I mean, it was a really crazy story.
That's not throwing away. When it went to the landfill, that's pretty far.
I mean, I don't know how much money it would be worth for me to dig through a landfill, but they did not honor his request to do that. So I think he was pretty frustrated, but who knows.
But there's also other stories. There's other stories about Bitcoin too, where I know people that were early investors in Bitcoin, and then then went up a lot in value. They tried to sell it, and it wasn't as liquid as stocks and bonds or cash, and so therefore, he was waiting and waiting. He was waiting 6 months to sell it, and he didn't understand that when you buy Bitcoin, you think that you can just freely exchange it. And sometimes you can, depend on the how big the exchange you're on, and that's the thing. It's with a private company and the exchange that you're with that's going to determine how quickly and how much you can get as quickly as you can.
So you and I both have worked with lots of businesses, lots of startups, and one of the things that I get asked so frequently when building and helping build brands for new businesses is about trademarking. So I want to make sure that we get to cover what your area of expertise, although we know you have many, and talk about how important it is for a trademark for a business. But also one of the questions that I think is important is like, when is it the right time to get a trademark for your business? So is it, in your startup, like when you're very first starting up, before you actually start up, you already need to be in business before you can get one? So what would you recommend if you're starting a business right now and are looking at having your brand trademark?
Okay, we're going to have to go into most of this in the second part of the show because we will be taking a break within the next 30 seconds. But basically, one point I want to point out: trademark is something that identifies a good. Service mark is something that identifies a service. Trademark rights are established based on usage, not based on registration. We're going to go into a lot more detail of this in the second part of the show, but you're listening to KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. And when we take a break, we'll be right back.
If you need help at home or at the office, call Made For You. Made For You is a locally owned, bonded, and licensed cleaning service with over 20 years of experience. All employees are vetted for your protection. No need to buy products or equipment. The Made For You staff comes complete with everything needed to make your home or office cleaner than ever. Hire Made For You one time, as needed, or an ongoing basis. No room is off limits. Laundry and ironing services are also available. Call Made For You for a free estimate. 255-2922. That's 255-2922. If you have a business problem, if someone doesn't honor their agreement and you need an aggressive attorney with over 27 years experience, the Law Office of Peter Bronstein has helped partners resolve disputes, franchisees resolve disputes, and other business owners who have a challenge. Let the Law Office of Peter Bronstein take your stress away. Visit lacorporateattorney.com. Don't wait too long and lose your rights. Solve your business challenge problem today. Visit lacorporateattorney.com.
Olive Terrace Bar and Grill is the hottest new Mediterranean fusion restaurant in Santa Clarita with unique delicacies like seafood right off the boat, mouth-watering prime steaks, artesian sandwiches, delicious pastas, and tasty kebabs. Unwind on their cozy outdoor patio at their weekend champagne brunch. Full menu and weekly specials at oliveterracebarandgrill.com. Check out their full bar and happy hour daily specials in Valencia on Copper Hill and Newhall Ranch Road by LA Fitness. Olive Terrace Bar and Grill, delicious food seasoned with love.
When you hire a CPA firm or tax preparer, you want a firm with people who understand you, your business and industry, and participates in your local community. You need a firm that has long-standing, successful professional relationships around Southern California with attorneys, bankers, and other CPA firms who can provide additional help to your personal and business needs. Denny & Company, LLP. CPAs that make life less taxing. Call 286-8860, 286-8860.
Hometown, your hometown station.
Good afternoon, Santa Clarita. You're listening to KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM on the Ask Brien Network. Well, it's not Vietnam, but it's very, very close in terms of depth and strength of voice. Well, one more thing. For people that know, KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM. Like no other station in the world.
Oh, I've got my work cut out. I've got my work cut out for me today, people. I've got my work cut out for me today.
Yes, you do, Tracy.
This is why I get paid the big bucks.
And thank you, Nitro Coffee.
Yeah, and thank you, Nitro Coffee, which Brien should never be served again. So before the break, we were talking about the being a business. When is the right time to get a trademark? What is a trademark? And if you're starting a business, like, what do you need to know from the trademark attorney extraordinaire yourself?
Okay. So a couple of things. First of all, a trademark, as I said at the end of the session, a trademark is something used to identify a good. A service mark is something used to identify a service. A trademark itself, it's not that you go ahead and go to the trademark office and get it registered. There are certainly many benefits by doing that. But trademark is established, created by usage. So if you started in 1680 in Plymouth Rock area, and you started a stone business, okay, and your product was a stone, and you've been using that since 1681, all right, and you've never ever had it registered, okay, it still is a trademark, okay. The difference is that when you get your mark registered with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, you get certain remedies that you would not get if you didn't have it registered. The biggest remedy you get are attorney's fees in filing a infringement case. So if you have a stone from 1661 and 81, and then you have your advertising, you find out sometime in 2019 somebody in the United States is using a stone for a telephone service, whatever, and you were using it that way, then you can file a infringement action, but you cannot collect attorney fees because it is not a registered mark. There are also other remedies that you are not able to collect. The benefit of filing for registration with the USPTO is, one, they will do a preliminary clearance, not a guaranteed clearance, but a preliminary clearance to see what other marks are registered. You will be able to collect attorney fees if you have to go after somebody that's infringing or using your mark, okay? And another benefit is you can have the R with the circle next to your name to show everybody, hey, it is registered, to let the world know that it is registered, and a couple of other benefits and remedies, including in filing a infringement action that it's quickly and able to do in federal court, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many benefits to registering, but you do not get a trademark just by picking out a name, okay? You get a trademark by using a name, and after you use that name, from the time period that you start beginning using that name in a specific category, okay, if you are the first person or first company to be using that, then you will have trademark rights over another. So whether or not you're registered or not won't matter. However, if somebody did get it registered 20 years ago and you've been using it for 100 years and never got it registered, you will have a problem because you have waited probably too long. You really want to, if you want to go after and file your mark, you really should do it within 5 years of somebody else using your mark so you can try to get their mark canceled.
So I was made aware of this through a petition, actually, that someone requested that I signed. And from what I understand, Apple can be really big bullies when it comes to defending their trademark. For example, this particular petition that was sent to me was for a small business whose logo had a pear in it. Not an apple, but a pear. And they were receiving cease and desist orders from Apple for them to not use the pear in their logo. How is that even possible?
Well, so there's a couple of triggers. First of all, one, you're not talking about Apple the name. You're talking about Apple the logo. Okay, so that's a different category right there. Okay. Two, any trademark, the definition isn't whether or not it's the same. That's not the definition. The definition comes down to, is it confusingly similar to another mark? So if the apple and the pear could be, when people look at it, they could say, well, oh, it gives me the impression that it's an apple, or, I can't see the distinction between the apple and the pear, and I'm confused by it. Well, then Apple will definitely prevail. That's one. Two, Apple has to be strong about going after things of that nature, because if you do not go after every single instance, okay, then you have an issue called abandonment. And if you abandon it by not following through or pursuing an action after a company that has a pear that may look like an apple, then they will lose that ability to do so in the future. So I understand you think it's bullying because it's a big, huge company, but it's also partially because they don't want to be considered to have abandoned their trademarks. Now, again, if you have a bite out of an apple and a bite out of a pear, you may feel that way, but it's really going to come down to a survey of 1,000 people. And if people think that, oh, I thought it was the Apple company and they just had another product or service, well, then without a doubt, they will prevail.
Right. Now, I can see that side of it. But that brings me to a bigger question, which is, you never really know where a company is going to go. When Steve Jobs created Apple, it was in his basement, right? Or in his garage. And then it's, obviously one of the most recognizable brands in the world today. But as a small business, you have so many other startup expenses. You're just in some cases, you're just trying to keep the power on. So is there a tipping point? Is there a balance where you can strike to say, okay, I need to invest in this before I invest in everything else that I do? Or do you need to have it be in use for a while, in order to then file? And is just a website like a .com, if you have a live website with a .com, does that qualify as in use?
Well, first of all, you've got a whole bunch of questions there. There's a multiple questions. So I'm going to go backwards here. So first of all,
you got to break all of it down. Break all of it down.
Right. In June of 2020, okay, long time ago, 7 months, 8 months. So the United States Supreme Court, the first case that the United States Supreme Court ever heard live after COVID, okay, where it was on Zoom, where people were able to listen to the arguments because they previously had not been able to do it, was the United States Patent and Trademark Office was attacked by Booking.com. And Booking.com, that exact issue came up. Booking.com, they had applied for a trademark. And because Booking is the same thing as reservations or getting a name, they said that you could not get Booking.com registered because it was descriptive of the exact specific purpose for what their name was. So like airplane could not get a trademark of the word airplane because it's exactly on point, or something similar to airplane could not get registered because it's describing the service if it wasn't an actual airplane. Well, in this case, Booking.com, the United States Patent and Trademark Office rejected the application after numerous back and forth, stating that Booking.com was descriptive of the service because you could book a hotel, book a flight, book this, and that's exactly what they were doing. So it was descriptive of the service, which is one of the criteria why you cannot get a mark registered. In this case, went to the Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court ruled in June of this year, 2020, I should say, that, sorry, but Booking.com is not the same thing as booking. And if it was booking, they would have the rejection would have been upheld. But they said Booking.com was different, and therefore you could get Booking.com registered. And they allowed it to be registered, and Booking.com became a registered trademark. So that's one point. Two, the other point is a website, okay, is acceptable for a specimen, which when you file a trademark, one of the items you have to file when you file your trademark application is a specimen of use, how it's actually used on the goods and services. So you could get the label for the Heinz ketchup, okay, but you could also now, today, a perfectly acceptable specimen would be a picture of the Heinz bottle being sold on a website, as long as when you print it out, it meets certain specifications and has the date of the date on the printed page. That is an acceptable specimen. So, website is a perfectly acceptable specimen for showing usage. Now, there are two ways you're going to get a mark registered. Okay, when you get a mark registered, you can apply for the mark as used in commerce, which was specifically the only way you could do this up until the Madrid Protocols in 1991. Okay, or you now, since that time frame, have also been able to file for a mark called intent to use. That means you're not currently using the mark in commerce to do business, but you intend on using it. So therefore, you go through the same process of applying for mark intent to use as not intent to use, but you cannot get your mark registered, okay, until you are actually using the mark in service, and you actually have 10% proof. And so therefore, you don't absolutely positively have to be using the mark in commerce. The last point I think you made was, regarding business. When do you want to do that? Well, that's a question for your budgeting and what you're trying to do, right? Marks are not based on, nobody knew what McDonald's was in 1940. Maybe the two McDonald brothers and a couple of people in San Bernardino knew about it, but nobody really knew about McDonald's.
And Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc knew about it.
Not until 1952.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, so not 1940.
In 1940,
okay, gotcha.
Nobody knew what McDonald's was. So the point is that you have to be able to, you have to understand that you're building a brand. At some point in time, you want to protect it. I think the earlier the better, because it's not just with the Patent and Trademark Office that you want to get registered. It's that you want other people to prevent other people from trying to take your mark. So I would say the earliest point that you can financially afford it, I think it's important to do. But that's up to everybody else and how big they want to make their brand and how important it's going to be to them in the business. And for instance, if you're in the franchise business, you are licensing, giving away your rights to use the mark to somebody else. Okay? And if you're doing that, you don't want to end up with, oh my God, 20 years later, you didn't do anything about it, and now somebody's suing you for infringement, and you've got all these franchisees. That's a pretty big risk. So, certainly the type of industry you're in is certainly going to determine also when you want to get it registered. But to me, I'm a lawyer. So for me, the earliest you can. Not because I'm a lawyer and collecting money on on trademarks to protect you. I think I answered that. If there's any other part of that question, let me know.
Well, I'm going to extend it past into social media because we, with Producer Podcasts, we are building brands for people who don't already have them because they start podcasts that are associated with a brand new concept, or they are creating a podcast that's an extension of their already existing brand. And podcasting is kind of the wild, wild west right now. So maybe we should start with that question first, which is, this actually happened to me with a client. Between the time they hired us to the time they launched their show, they had a name for their podcast. And it's about a 60-day window to get a show launched. So within that 60-day window, 2 other podcasts launched a podcast with the same name, because in Apple Podcasts, you don't have exclusivity. Like, you could have 3 shows, because this happened to my client, 3 shows that have the exact same name. But they had already purchased the name of the show.com, and they had already purchased the name of the show podcast.com. So in that case, if there was to be an issue because the other 2 shows went live on Apple Podcasts before their show, but they had reserved the domain for the name and the podcast prior to either of those other 2 shows going live. So if you were an attorney and you were representing my client, who would win?
Well, there's thousands of other factors. On the limited facts you gave me, the client does have a problem. The problem is why? Trademark rights are established based on usage, not based on registration. Okay? The fact I can go out there, I might be able to go out there tomorrow and even buy Nike.com if Nike didn't get it registered, right? That doesn't mean I own Nike, all right? The fact of the matter is, if they can prove that they had some type of a way to prove that they were actually using the name, maybe they had an ad in the New York Times, maybe they had an article presented in an Entrepreneur magazine, and the name was out there, and they could prove that they were using it before the other company, yes. But otherwise, they're going to have trouble.
That's so interesting, though, because if someone was to listen to either of those 3 shows, all named the same thing, all different concepts, by the way, but then they went to the internet and they plugged in the name of the show, it's going to go to my client's podcast site, not the other 2 sites. So I don't know.
Well,
it's not in dispute. I'm just saying this was the first time experience that I had as a producer. And it was shocking to see that could all happen within such a short window of time. That's how much creativity, I guess, gets created simultaneously.
Well, it's also similar in the recording business, right? You can go to ASCAP, okay, and ASCAP, and then try to get a song, listed there in that catalog, right? That's a similar situation. And yet, even though you get it there, that doesn't mean that you have the copyright. If somebody else went to the copyright office and got it registered and established that title was prior to yours, even though you got it registered with ASCAP. Because each one has a different database that they're looking at. And it's going to appear in the database. That's also one of the reasons why I advise clients, and I have to say that probably 98% of my clients refuse to do so, but all clients are advised to get a trademark search done before they file. And the reason why they don't do it is if you go to a real big nationwide company, they're going to charge you $700-800 to do a search. But guess what? They're going to search everything. So they would pick up the podcast that on the other 2 podcast companies. They're going to pick up a newspaper article, in a small regional paper. They're going to pick up a DBA in Vermont, and every single corporation LLC database, every state trademark database, and and the USPTO. They do a full-blown comprehensive search. And if you're really launching a big company or a nationwide company, you really should do that. But most people say, nah, I don't want to spend the money. I got to limit my money. And when you're talking about $800 or $900, and then you find out 2 years later you get sued or the name has to change, it's a lot more money to do that than it is to get it done right. But most people, and I represent $1 million companies, say, sorry, I'm not going to spend my money on it.
That seems insane
We've got to take a break, and we're going to be right back. You're listening to KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Thank you very much. We'll be right back.
Healthcare can be difficult if you're underinsured or have Medi-Cal. Samuel Dixon Family Health Center can help. Services are available on a sliding fee schedule. The mission of the Samuel Dixon Family Health Center is to give the Santa Clarita Valley access to affordable, quality primary care. There are 3 locations to serve you: Canyon Country, Newhall, and Valverde. Go to sdfhc.org for more information and to find the location most convenient for you.
When you're looking for a midnight snack, sometimes fast food just doesn't cut it. California Bakery and Cafe is open 24/7, so you'll be able to find fresh donuts, danishes, bagels, all-natural fruit juices, gourmet sandwiches, and much more at any hour. With elaborate cakes for any occasion, including weddings, baptisms, anniversaries, corporate events, or any special event. California Bakery and Cafe in Santa Clarita is open 24 hours to satisfy any craving, anytime. Call us, 255-1254. That's 255-1254.
If you have a business problem, if someone doesn't honor their agreement and you need an aggressive attorney with over 27 years experience, the Law Office of Peter Bronstein has helped partners resolve disputes, franchisees resolve disputes, and other business owners who have a challenge. Let the Law Office of Peter Bronstein take your stress away. Visit lacorporateattorney.com. Don't wait too long and lose your rights. Solve your business challenge problem today. Visit lacorporateattorney.com. Why did Mercedes-Benz of Valencia win the Dealer of Excellence Award in 2019?
Because we strive to provide the most outstanding sales experience.
Mercedes-Benz of Valencia COO Chris Paz.
We know you have high expectations. Our stellar team will meet and exceed your expectations. That's why we were named Mercedes Best of the Best, placing us in the top 10% of all Mercedes dealers nationwide.
Find out how you can lease a new Mercedes for unbelievably low monthly payments. Details at mbzvalencia.com.
Hello, KHTS Studio.
Hey, Tori, just calling in, making sure we're all set for Monday. I can't believe it's been almost a year since we've done the morning show together.
Oh, I am totally ready, but let's go down the checklist.
Go.
No more help with remote learning, kids back in school?
Check. Plastic partition between us?
Check. Fresh face masks?
Check. Cake?
Wait, what? Cake?
Yeah, to celebrate my return.
I like how you think. I'm on it. It's good to have you back.
The Hometown Morning Show with Tori and Kyle returns Monday, March 8th at 6 a.m. right here on 98.1 FM and AM 1220, KHTS.
It's like no other station I've ever listened to. It's great.
Your hometown station.
Welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Tracy had a question for our guest.
Well, I just wanted to continue our conversation about this trademark situation because you've given me so many good insights on that. So I have another client. It's like I'm getting all this free advice for my clients. So I have another client who launched a podcast. So they're launching a podcast, but they discovered when they decided on the name of their show, they discovered that there was another magazine that was named the same thing as what they wanted to name their podcast. But since a magazine is not the same as a podcast, does that mean that they're two separate categories and that they could name it the same as the magazine?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, is the magazine a registered trademark? I'd like to know that. Even though it is a trademark, and even though they could present problems down the road, I would want to know whether or not the USPTO would be potentially allowing them to. The other thing is I kind of believe that a podcast and a magazine are both in the media platform, okay? And by both being in the media platform, that it is kind of in the same classification, and so therefore I think it would be difficult. Now, the USPTO may not know about that if the magazine has not been registered, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an infringement, because if the magazine's been around and now you're coming out with, hey, your podcast is Entrepreneur and it's been in Entrepreneur magazine, well, that's going to present a problem. And if Entrepreneur magazine wanted to go after them, they most definitely could. But also Entrepreneur magazine, I'm sure, is a registered trademark. So that the USPTO would not even allow that to go any further. If it was not registered, though, there's a chance they might be able to get it passed, but getting it passed doesn't mean anything because, again, if somebody can establish they've been using it prior in the same category, they're going to prevail. And I think that whether or not, to me, magazine or podcast, they're both in the same category.
So it brought up 2 or 3 different scenarios that have to do with trademarking and podcasts. Where do you think the future with podcasting is going to go in terms of being able to claim names? And, is it too soon to tell? Or, when the people went crazy getting domains when the URLs first came available. I know in the radio business, it was like they just went and bought Magic 102 or they went and bought, Country 101.5 or something like that. But with podcasting, do you see that what could happen?
Well, first of all, you're not supposed to be buying names just because you want to hog them or own them. You have to have a basis for it. So if you go out and you bought Magic 102 and there is a Magic 102 radio station, they're going to be, under cyber squatting law, they will be allowed to get that name back. So you can't just get somebody's name. That happened a lot in the beginning. The big companies weren't going out there and registering their marks yet through the .com. So that's one thing. 2, and by the way,
that really did happen. That really did happen to us, by the way. That's why I used that as a real life example. That really did happen to us.
And I had a client. I had a client that was attacked for cyber squatting, and he had AOLL.com. Trying to get like a derivative of that, and that's the problem. You can't trade off of a derivative of something else. There is one case, though, and I've got about 30 seconds. So Adobe was filed or Acrobat, one of those companies, filed a lawsuit, and the guy's name was actually Adobe. And so he went to court, and he was able to prevail because he said he got it for his personal name, not for the company name. But that was a rare circumstance. Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left, so we're going to have to kind of wrap this up pretty quickly. But essentially, you do not want to have a mark that somebody else has used in the past. And if you do, you're going to face infringement cases. And if the mark is registered, they are going to collect attorney fees. And if you have a case, against an attorney, and you're going to spend $50,000 in legal fees just to do that, you're going to have to come up with a different name. So the best bet, the best way to do things, come up with your own name, unique, and build it yourself. You listen to the Ask Brien Radio Show, KHTS 1220, 98.1 FM, like no other station in the world.